I was supposed to make this video like a week or two ago, but life got in the way. If I'm honest, I also briefly considered keeping this build to myself, just because I'm enjoying it a lot, or was at the time, I guess. But then the reality is I'm probably not going to be playing the same build over and over again. Like, I'm just going to be testing new things out. And if they do get around nerfing this, like, that's fine. We're going to be getting new classes, weapon types, ascendancies, lots of new toys to tinker with, which I'd rather do. But yeah, if you look back at the videos on this channel, you'll probably notice that Righteous Fire in PoE 1 was the skill that I enjoyed the most. Particularly the build that I came up with where you use obliteration wands to get chain explosions. And I suppose, like, either consciously or subconsciously, I've been trying to build stuff that would work in a very similar manner. And I think this is probably the best I've come up with. You can kind of make the joke where, like, if GGG doesn't want to give us Righteous Fire in PoE 2, we'll have to build Righteous Fire ourselves. But you know, it's just a joke anyways. But yeah, as you can see, like, the area coverage is really, really nice. And then whenever you see some rares, you can just left click them once, and then the bleed will probably finish them off. Oh, I hate these mobs. Pretty annoying. That's basically all. Let me see. And then whenever you, like, a rare is a little bit too tanky, or when there's multiple rares around, and you want to be a little bit more cautious, you also have Hammer of the Gods, so you can just, like, pre-cast the hammer, roll a little bit around, and then when the rare's dead, no big deal. I'll go ahead and do the expedition later. It's too slow. Same thing with the ritual. Where's the boss in this map again? Is it this way? Yeah, it's this way. Okay. Hopefully I don't flub my perfect strike, because I'll be the first to admit that I'm not the best at it. And also, this map isn't necessarily the most permissive boss to get that kind of going. Let's go ahead and precast the Hammer of the Gods. There we go. There you have a nice little ignite. You can also amplify it with left click for bleeds. No big deal. The clear is so satisfying. And you can actually just, like, space out, focus on looting your stuff, while monsters just explode for free, which is hilarious. Like, I don't imagine this is the meaningful combat that GGG was looking for. But yeah, let's get into the whole mechanics and how this character functions. Start with gear, I guess. It's nothing too crazy, just like life, resistances, flat physical wherever possible. Yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. Another thing worth mentioning is that I'm actively avoiding getting evasion as much as I can. I have two weapons, which lets me mess around a little bit with weapon swaps and the passive tree. But you don't necessarily need to. I just got lucky and I happened to get two of them. But yeah, I'll get into that in a bit. So, the main interaction, right? So what's going on? Why are screens blowing up while I'm not doing anything? There's this small little bit in the patch notes that a lot of people might have not seen, but it's Wind Dancer stages are now consumed on being hit by an enemy instead of from a melee attack. And I'd already played a build previously, before this patch, doing something similar with a Blood Mage, if I'm not mistaken. where I would have to like walk around, run straight at the melee mobs so that I would get melee hit, and then that would create the shockwave from Wind Dancer. But then whenever you faced a whole bunch of ranged mobs or casters, it would just be a nightmare. It wouldn't work. So thankfully now you don't have to worry about that. And that's the whole point as to why I mentioned that I wasn't getting any evasion. Like, the whole gimmick is that Wind Dancer is supposed to give you more evasion so that you don't get hit very often, and then whenever you're hit, it releases all 3 stages that it's built up and deals a lot of damage. So what I did was try to get no evasion if possible. My helmet has a little bit, but it's just really good, so you know, you gotta make do with what you get when you're playing solo self-found. But yeah, if you don't have any evasion, then it's almost guaranteed that a monster is gonna hit you, and then you're gonna get the nice little shockwave from Gale Force. Gale Force hits immediately for attack damage based off of your weapon. So then you have to use like the strongest weapon that you can use for a single hit. And being as low as they are, maces are generally the best way to go about it. There might be something worth doing with crossbows as well, and I could see staves, or quarterstaffs I should say, maybe, but then you'd have to go through crits, and like that's a whole entire headache, which I'd rather not deal with, so I'm just going with two-handed maces. So okay, so what's happening? You're being hit, you get the shockwave, shockwave deals a lot of damage because you're using a two-handed mace. Now what? Well, we're playing a Titan, so getting capped on chance to poison is fairly easy, as I've mentioned on other characters. You just use the Envenom support, and if you're missing a little bit, then you can just grab a few chance to poison jewels. I'm getting 22 from my jewels, which, if I'm not mistaken, should be 2 jewels. We'll look at the passive tree and I'll verify there. But yeah, I believe it's 2 chance to poison jewels, and that leaves me at 107. So why poison? We're going poison because then you can use corrosion so that the poison applied from the huge hit from Wind Dancer will also break armor. And then once you break armor, you know it, you love it, armor explosion. So now we get this like huge shockwave, apply a poison, break armor. Armor broken generates another huge explosion, which also scales immediately off of attack damage, which once again is better with large single hits, which makes sense with maces, and side note, crossbow staves maybe, but maces, right? And then the last 2 are just more area of effect, because, I don't know, I'm greedy and I like to see big fireworks, I guess. But if you're lacking damage, you can always go down that route. Now, something that I wasn't expecting, and I figured out when I was playing the other poison builds, is that Herald of Plague is actually really interesting. The whole bit where it says it spreads the strongest poison, we're only applying 1 large poison, so that's good. And it's spreading, it counts as inflicting a new matching ailment. Now, I would have imagined that that would have just carried over the value of the poison damage being dealt over time, but it seems like it also applies support gem effects. So in this case, it's carrying over corrosion, and it's carrying over armor explosion. It's not too distant to how in poison builds you get Plague Burst proliferated. In this case, you're proliferating the corrosion and armor explosion. So, in a nutshell, all of this means that we're using a big, slow weapon that hits for a lot, and we're not worrying about how slow it is, because we're immediately inflicting its damage through Wind Dancer, and then every single mob is immediately exploding for weapon damage again. So it's as though we're attacking many, many times immediately, despite our weapon being so slow. That's, in a nutshell, what makes this build function as well as it does. Okay, so like that's fine and all, but what do we do for single target, right? As I mentioned, for rares, I've been using Mace Strike because it's the fastest attack with the highest amount of attack damage multiplier. And since we're not scaling attack speed nor crit, and we don't want to be swinging our mace too much, I decided to go for bleed, so that layers on top of the poison from the Wind Dancer. So now we have 2 dots going. And my bleed is supported with, usual bleed supports to maximize damage there. You could make the argument where you could put your bleed on Hammer of the Gods, which is a way larger hit. And that would work really well for bosses, arguably better than using Perfect Strike. But then you'd be in a weird situation where whenever you walk up to a rare mob and you're not killing it quickly enough, you'll have to either use Hammer of the Gods and try to bait it into the circle of the AoE, or you'll just be taking too long to kill it. So I decided to go with Mace Strike. A slight side note I wanted to mention is Exploit Weakness, which I played around with a little bit, where if you put Exploit Weakness on your Mace Strike, then you've got this thing going where Wind Dancer poisons, breaks armor, explodes, and then Mace Strike consumes the broken armor to deal more damage. Not so much so that the Mace Strike is hitting for more, but just so that your enemy no longer has broken armor, and then the next time you hit it with Wind Dancer, you can break its armor again. It's a bit gimmicky, it works, maybe you can tinker with that, but I didn't find it to be worthwhile, which is why I just went for the full bleed setup. And then finally, the boss killing setup. We got Infernal Cry, just buff the next attack you can use. In a perfect world, you would use this for Perfect Strike, and you can use it if you stun the boss. So once you inflict a stun, you can very quickly use Infernal Cry and then load your Perfect Strike. But Perfect Strike is the main brunt of the damage. This is how we're actually killing bosses. The damage multiplier is very high, 1444, so that's a very large ignite. We're supporting that with Eternal Flame so that the ignite duration is doubled, so more damage over time over that huge single hit, and then just generic damage increases to inflict a stronger ignite. Surprised I'm not using Searing Flame here. Maybe I should use that, or maybe that would be my 5th socket. Not sure. So then what am I using Hammer of the Gods for? Well, the huge hit can be used for safety, so you can pre-cast Hammer of the Gods, the hammer falls, it stuns the boss, and then after it's stunned, you can use Infernal Cry Perfect Strike. But the other thing you can use it for is actually shocks, which is kind of strange. We're scaling our ailment chance, so that includes the chance to inflict shock, which is perfect. So this huge hit is supported with Lightning Infusion, Conduction, and Ambrosia, since we're not using our mana flasks for anything, right? So now suddenly we're at a spot where we're dealing, I can't remember, it must be 100% physical and then 50% additional lightning, approximately, maybe even more. And then that lightning portion of damage is applying a shock that will scale the ignite from Perfect Strike, the bleed from Mace Strike, and the poison from Wind Dancer if you get hit. All in all, it's a very solid and compact character. Anything else to mention here? Alright, so before I go into the passive tree, since I'm doing the whole weapon swap thing, I do want to mention that you don't really need 2 maces. This is another build that would significantly be improved once we get the feature where you can lock one weapon set and then use your weapon swap points on both weapon sets, because then you wouldn't be juggling the 2 weapons and you wouldn't have this delay. Because right now I'm in a weird spot where this is the weapon that I'm using for area clear, so my AoE is scaled on this passive set. It's the weaker of the 2 weapons, because I want stronger single target damage for bosses, obviously. But then if I accidentally left click when I'm trying to loot or something, it'll weapon swap back into this, and then this is linked to my single target passive tree, which doesn't have the AoE increases. So then if I get hit, my Wind Dancer and explosions are all... they're not tiny, but they're a bit smaller, right? So that's why I have Infernal Cry linked to this weapon set. So then I can use War Cries as a way to reset my passive tree back into the AoE clear. I don't know if I can... Yeah, I guess I can't do this here. But yeah, like you can see all the AoE nodes are there. So that's like a minor inconvenience that will be better once we can get the weapon set locking feature. Okay, so if I were just using one weapon, I would say go for the AoE. Like, the only thing you're getting from weapon swapping is dropping AoE nodes and then getting these skill speed nodes. And this is damage for melee attacks. Yeah, like, there isn't very much else going on. There's a few chance to bleed nodes here. That's because I don't have jewels with chance to bleed, so in order to cap, I went this way. Got rage generation on melee hit as well, which you could also get on a jewel. So if you only have one weapon, you wouldn't get these vanity points, and you would just be stuck with this set. The difference, let me show you. So this is the attack speed with those increased attack speed nodes. And then this is the other one, which is slightly slower. It's not that big of a deal, really. Slightly more noticeable with Perfect Strike, which, again, this is increased attack speed. And then if we allow for weapon set 1, it's a good chunk slower. Like, you can feel it. It's a good bit slower, but at least the AoE is also larger, so it makes it easier to hit the boss. But again, just vanity points. If you can afford getting 2 maces, then good on you. If not, you'll be perfectly fine. Passive tree is super straightforward. I don't think we're going to take too long going over it. We're going Titan for the increased small passives, which is phenomenal. I believe this is probably the ascendancy that I've enjoyed the most in this game so far, because it allows for a lot of damage, it allows for capping ailments very easily, and it also increases AoE significantly, which is it's a whole different spiel about why attack builds feel so much better than casters right now, but between the herald effects and how much access to increased AoE you have with attacks, spells just feel terrible comparatively, which is weird because I've always leaned towards spells. But yeah, anyways, let me stop rambling. Yeah, just melee attack damage, AoE, gain physical as extra fire. This is good for the initial hit, I guess, on Gale Force, but it's not really good for anything else. Should honestly just remove these and just go elsewhere. Then increase two-handed damage, two-handed weapon damage, increased AoE as well with two-handed weapons. Resolute technique, so you don't have to worry about accuracy, which is a bit strange because you still need dexterity if you want to level up your Wind Dancer, and you would get a good amount of damage off of doing so, which I think I should also do. But since you don't need accuracy at all, they're kind of like wasted points. I don't see myself playing without Resolute Technique. I just love the certainty that my attacks will land, that the shockwaves will hit everything, as will the armor explosions. Increased AoE, increased area damage. Also scales Perfect Strike, it scales Mace Strike, it scales Hammer, scales Wind Dancer, and it scales Armor Explosion as well. Increased attack damage. We're going for increased AoE over here. Small vanity thing with the weapon swap where you can get like AoE here and then you can get melee damage here for your single target. This cluster is very important because it synergizes very well with Wind Dancer, where each single node grants you rage whenever you are hit. And since you're waiting to get hit by some random mob, then this will keep your rage at max, which will give you more attack damage, which also applies to armor explosion. So very important. Then this cluster has a nice amount of attack damage at the cost of reducing your attack speed. we don't happen to care about our attack speed, so this is phenomenal for us. And then I'm grabbing this one cluster with increased magnitude of ailments for so many reasons. Like, it increases the magnitude of your shock from Hammer of the Gods, it increases the ignite that you apply with Perfect Strike, it increases the bleed from Mace Strike, but the more important part is that it's increasing the magnitude of your poison, which is making it so that you break armor faster, which leads to the explosion being triggered quicker. Now, these small nodes are giving a large amount of magnitude, which apply to everything, and the only other poison nodes are all the way over here, which I wouldn't say is justifiable traveling towards. There's a few other clusters that I tend to get over here, but again, like, since we're going for clear and like being more concise, packing all of the passive points that we want for larger AoE and like managing our single target as well, I don't know if it's worth stretching all the way over there. These chance to inflict ailment nodes are fantastic. Like, these are the bread and the butter for Titan with ailments. Then more two-handed damage, more AoE, and then I decided to go all the way down here for even more AoE, again, because I'm greedy and I like to see big fireworks. But I don't know if this is necessary. Like, there's so many ways that you can take this concept and make it your own. Like, I can see a world where you get less AoE, and then you get more ailment stuff. I can see a world where you get Giant's Blood, and then you can use a shield because you're relying on being hit to proc everything. That would also make it so that you can get Lay Siege as well with Glancing Blows, which are right there. There's just so many things you can do, but the like template is just very solid and very strong. One thing I considered, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna try it out, is going Amazon as I did with the shield skills, because maces have very little critical hit chance as a base. It's the same situation as the shield, so if we go Amazon, we would be able to scale crit onto a two-handed mace. It might be overkill, and it might not be worth it. It would come with a downside that, since we're starting here and we're going for crit, which usually ends up going like a little bit into the monk area and a little on this edge, then we wouldn't be able to get any of the AoE clusters here, and we wouldn't be getting increased ailments. But you probably don't need ailments, because if you're going crit, maybe you can use like Plasma Shot on a crossbow or Hammer of the Gods, and then the crit might be able to just outright one-shot. And regarding the smaller AoE, the proliferation from Herald of Plague might be good enough. I don't know, I might try it out, I might not. But for what it's worth, this is a good solid template, and I think I've rambled enough, so I'll just leave it here. But yeah, hope you guys are doing well.